With this talk, I'd like to offer some final thoughts about On the Road, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the essays that you've read for this final unit, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, and a supposedly fun thing that I'll never do again. And then I'd finally like to offer some closing thoughts about American journeys and the concept of freedom. So, first, On the Road. The place in American literature of On the Road is still being determined. It's an important work, for sure, but the nature of its importance is still subject to some debate. Is the book important because it introduced a new method and style of writing, spontaneous prose, that liberated the narrative form from the, quote, literary, grammatical, and syntactical inhibitions, unquote? Is it important because it offered new visions of freedom to Americans who were being suffocated by a post-war culture that emphasized conformity, homogeneity, and material culture? Or is it important just as an artifact from the 1950s that influenced readers at the time of a particular generation and that accurately conveyed certain attitudes and beliefs from the Beat movement, even, if they seem questionable and have kind of dated today? I leave it to you all to determine for yourselves the overall importance of this work. Its importance in terms of a travel narrative, however, is undeniable. I thought long and hard about works that emerged out of the car culture of the 20th century, and in the end, I chose On the Road because, in spite of its flaws, and I'm not a Kerouac apologist, I will absolutely admit that it's not a perfect book. No other work came even close to conveying both the dream and the reality of car travel in, the 20th century, of the quintessential American road trip. Indeed, one of the book's strengths is that it honestly strives to convey both that dream, the dreams that propel the travelers, and the realities that they encounter. And it depicts the ways that these dreams and realities are constantly at odds with one another. Dean's ecstatic visions of glory lure Sal on the road, and yet the desires they pursue are by nature insatiable, unattainable, and thus their journey will never have a proper ending. There will always be another girl to pursue, another crazy party, another place to visit, another deep conversation, another hearty meal to enjoy, another mindless job to work at to pay for all of it. It never ends in a sense. By the novel's close, the characters have crisscrossed back and forth across the country and even into Mexico, and Sal seems to have found true love, which is the antithesis of travel in Kerouac's world, while Dean's seemingly insatiable nature means that he's rootless, drifting back and forth in seemingly aimless fashion. The book implicitly questions our goals that impel us to travel. What is it that we're looking for when we get on the road? How do our goals shape and guide our journey? Is the goal of travel something that is actually attainable, or is it only illusory? These questions are further pursued by the final essays assigned for the semester. Slouching Toward Bethlehem is really a perfect follow-up to On the Road. It's set 10 years later in 1967, a decade after the publication of Kerouac's book, and the youth of the hippie generation have set forth on a mass exodus to San Francisco, as though an entire generation has taken up Kerouac's call to hit the road. The essay may not initially seem like a travel story because it doesn't depict any actual traveling besides the normal day-to-day travel around the city of San Francisco. I would argue, though, that it is a travel narrative because it depicts a group of nomads who have all left their hometowns and, in many cases, their families in order to pursue their own dreams and visions of freedom. Joan Didion is exploring the nature of these dreams and the nature of the American culture that has created them. And the insights she gains, I think you'll agree, are not necessarily optimistic in nature. A supposedly fun thing that I'll never do again is a contemporary work. A few of its references, like the endless loop of Jurassic Park and the camcorders, may strike you as sounding a little bit dated. But cruise ship travel in general has not really changed since the essay's publication in Harper's Magazine in 1996. David Foster Wallace is also interested in what motivates people to choose cruise ship travel, and beneath the comic hilarity of his playful prose, His insights are also deeply pessimistic. Please make sure, as you read A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, that you read the footnotes. They are not just extraneous, they are a hallmark of David Foster Wallace's style, and they contain a good deal of valuable information and insights. I don't know of any other writer who writes the way he did, but please make sure that you do read the footnotes. The works of this semester have all featured journeys toward freedom of one kind or another. As Americans, we have a tendency to idealize the concept of freedom. Our society considers freedom to be a good thing. When freedom is defined as freedom from slavery and oppression, as in Frederick Douglass's narrative, pretty much every contemporary reader would agree that this form of freedom is of great value. Whitman's intellectual and spiritual freedom and Twain's freedom to gain important life lessons on the Mississippi are also conveyed as positive qualities, and I suspect that all of you readers would also agree that these travel narratives rightly celebrate freedom as a worthy travel goal. But in On the Road, Sal's idealized visions of personal freedom prove easy to pursue, but impossible to fully attain. And they're problematic visions in nature of the sexist, racist, homophobic moments of the book that reveal his limited, dated perceptions, even as he strives to be so free, so radical, and so socially progressive. And in both Slouching Toward Bethlehem and A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, the nature and value of freedom is really called into question. In both cases, freedom proves to be a problematic goal for privileged members of later 20th century American society. Is freedom still a viable goal of travel? If so, how do we define freedom for ourselves and for others? How is freedom obtained and how is it kept? And how do journeys fit into these pursuits? American travel narratives will continue to pursue these questions, and as the narrative voices and personas and the modes of travel continue to change, so will the answers. Thanks.